Hi, I'm Scott Marion, MoDOT's Director of Motor Carrier Services Division, and today I'd like to tell you a transportation story that I think is interesting and a little bit alarming. It's about how our deteriorating bridges are impacting freight. While the title may be a little tongue-in-cheek, this really is an unfortunate story with negative safety, economic, and political impacts. But I hope sharing it will help us understand why it is happening and why we need to make transportation, and specifically our bridges, a priority. The main issue or premise of this story is simple and straightforward. We would prefer these huge loads to travel on our big wide interstates and highways that can more safely handle them. But that's not often possible due to height restrictions and other bridge issues. Planners and builders in the 1950s and 60s did not see these big loads coming. It's not uncommon to receive calls asking, why in the world would you bring this huge, dangerous looking load through our town? The utility company had to come and raise the power lines, there were highway patrol escorts, and it tied up traffic. Surely you could have routed them on a major road. You might wonder, how many oversized overweight permits do we have? The answer is about 155,000 each year. Permits have increased 14.4% over the past 4 years. This year alone, there'll be close to 3,000 OSOW loads per week moving through Missouri. And just like fast food places, the loads are getting supersized. While total permits have increased 14% over the last 4 years, the really big trucks, superloads, have increased almost 54%. As you can see, the superloads can be imposing and often require pusher trucks to help them up hills. It's no wonder that folks in small communities have concerns when they see these coming through town. And the trucks hauling components for wind energy farms are really increasing. These loads can be up to 300 feet long. Motor carrier services in the districts work with shippers and carriers months in advance to route these loads. We expect to see close to 3,000 of these wind loads in this year. Many permit applications for superloads are sent to our bridge division for analysis to make sure the bridges along the route can safely handle the heavier weights, widths, and heights. MoDOT's bridge division will process over 2,500 superloads this year. That's an incredible 95% increase from 2009. And in 1995, the bridge division reviewed only 35 superloads for the entire year. Most folks just don't realize how much this sector of the trucking industry has grown over the years. Missouri has become a safe route maze for oversized overweight carriers, and the next few pages will help show the problem our state is facing. And in many instances, the declining condition of our bridges is also becoming a roadblock for regular legal-sized loads, such as agricultural trucks, dump trucks, and even school buses, fire trucks, and ambulances. The map of Missouri's 604 critical condition bridges has been fairly well publicized. We sometimes call it the measles map. With all of the red marks on the map, you can see why it's getting harder to find safe and efficient routes for these large loads. And unfortunately, over the past few years, between 50 and 100 bridges are added to the critical condition list each year. This is where things really start getting interesting. The 601 critical condition bridges are just the start of the problems. This map also shows our almost 1,400 posted bridges that have weight or lane restrictions. And notice all of the blue dots, especially on our interstate. These represent vertical clearance problems for tall loads. And finally, on top of everything else, this slide shows a typical day of restrictions from the traveler information map that the public sees. These are the normal work zones, maintenance activities, and traffic impacts that happen every day. On this particular day, this added an additional 704 restricted routes for that day's permit applications. Just think, 641 critical condition bridges, 1,400 posted bridges, the mass of blue dots representing vertical clearance problems, and almost 800 normal, everyday work zone and traffic impacts. It truly is a maze. MoDOT, the patrol, and our motor carriers do a remarkable job of dealing with these challenges, but as we're hearing more and more frequently, the public and elected officials don't like where we're having to route some of these loads. To show the difficulty in finding efficient, straight, safe routes, here's a real-life example of a fairly common-sized, oversized, overweight permitted load. The load entered Missouri from Illinois at I-270 and exited into Kansas at I-435, just a normal St. Louis to Kansas City trip. The dark green line represents the logical preferred route for this load and how we tried to route it. Major roads, a total of 271 miles, pretty straightforward. But because of posted weight limits on bridges, width and vertical clearance issues, and work zone restrictions, The load had to be routed literally all over the place, including lettered routes. A 271-mile trip increased by 142 miles to 413 miles total, a 52% increase. And it kills me to say this type of situation occurs every day, adding time, fuel, and cost to carriers, shippers, and customers, and increased damage to many of our secondary roads and bridges. Unfortunately, some carriers are now choosing to avoid and go around Missouri due to the many route restrictions and added time and expense. They've decided we no longer have the infrastructure needed to provide for the efficient movement of goods that we once did. And many Missouri-based businesses and manufacturers are also experiencing increased cost. And if our bridges continue to decline, we know we will have even more public safety concerns for buses, fire trucks, and emergency responders. My hope for Missouri is that someday soon we will choose to make an investment in our bridges, bring them up to 21st century standards, and "you can't get there from here" becomes a thing of the past.